This is the Momentum Podcast.
This is officially an economic crisis. Last week, when the jobless claims numbers came out, the Secretary of the U.S. Treasury said that the numbers were not relevant because of a stimulus package that was about to be released. But if you followed Alex for any length of time in the past few weeks, you know that not only were the numbers relevant, but that statement's kind of ridiculous. Over 10 million people have filed for unemployment in the last 2 weeks. In this episode of the Momentum Podcast, Alex is going to break down exactly why this issue is so important for entrepreneurs to understand and exactly what you can start doing today to help humanity push forward. I hope you enjoy.
I'm Alex Sharfin, and this is the Momentum Podcast, made for empire builders, game changers, trailblazers, shot takers, record breakers, world makers, and creators of all kinds. Those among us who can't turn it off and don't know why anyone would want to. We challenge complacency, destroy apathy, and we are obsessed with creating momentum so we can roll over bureaucracy and make our greatest contribution. Sure, we pay attention to their rules, but only so that we can bend them, break them, then rewrite them around our own will. We don't accept our destiny, we define it. We don't understand defeat because you only lose if you stop, and we don't know how. While the rest of the world strives for average and clings desperately to the status quo, we are the minority, the few, who are willing to hallucinate there could be a better future. And instead of just daydreaming of what could be, we endure the vulnerability and exposure it takes to make it real. We are the evolutionary hunters, clearly the most important people in the world, because entrepreneurs are the only source of consistent, positive human evolution, and we always will be. Good morning, everyone. So ever since last week, when the jobless claims number of how many people lost their jobs last week came out, I've been waiting for this morning. So last week, we had 3.28 million people lose their jobs in the United States. To give you perspective on what that means is that the previous record was 695,000 in 1982. And during the foreclosure crisis, I think we got to around 645,000 jobless claims numbers in a single week. So let's get very real about what's going on. Last week, we had 3.28 million jobless claims numbers. That was about 7 times the previous record. Last week, and I'm frustrated now, so you might hear some frustration in my voice. Last week, Steve Mnuchin, I think that's how you say his last name, the director of the U.S. Treasury, which I have some experience with. I actually worked with Director Lockhart, the previous director of the U.S. Treasury, or one of the previous directors of the U.S. Treasury during the Obama administration during the foreclosure crisis. So I know the position. I understand what his position's responsibilities are. I sat 2 chairs away from the person who was in his position previously at a round table. And he came out last week and said that these numbers were not relevant. The 3.28 million losses was not relevant because there was a stimulus bill that was coming out. Well, if you saw my lives and if you read my stuff, you know that I said not only are they relevant, but this is a massive, endemic, international emergency that we had 3.28 million people lose their jobs. That puts us into an instant recession, an instant, some would say a depression. This morning, I was waiting for the job loss numbers to come out. I've been up since literally 4 a.m. doing beautiful mind notes over here and trying to figure out the math behind this. And here are the numbers today. 6,648,000 people lost their jobs last week. When we combine those two numbers, 10 million Americans have lost their jobs in the last 2 weeks. And if we look at what that means, if we look at how much money has been pulled out of the economy, here's what I want you to know. This is a time to understand what's happening. This is a time to be a realist. And this is a time to understand that this will be the most challenged economic market any of us have ever been in. This is the most challenged market any of us have ever been in. And what that means for us as entrepreneurs is that we need to do the following immediately. So number one, you need to adapt to the fact that we are in a crisis market. This is a crisis. We are going to have challenged spending for a long time. You're going to see people's incomes go down. You're going to see people be much more careful with what they're spending. And in a crisis market, as an entrepreneur, if you've been selling something that improves, something that feels good, something that makes people that like is a vitamin, in a crisis market, vitamins don't sell. And I don't mean that literally. I'm not talking to supplement companies, but I'm saying if your offer is an improvement offer, you need to get to a painkiller, something that stops pain, something that helps people right now, something that helps them in this crisis. Start pivoting now. So that's number one. Number two is we are going to see massive restructuring in a number of industries. And I will share my predictions with you here, but I want you to know I'm preparing a thorough webinar to be presented next week on Thursday. We will be emailing it out. So if you're not on my list, go to charfen.com and get on my list. You're going to want our information because throughout the foreclosure crisis, we analyzed this information, we shared it, and we can tell you what it means. And so here's what I want you to know. The second part of this is the industries that we are going to see massively reset effective right now is we're going to see a massive crash in residential real estate right out of the gate. Because when 10 million people lose their jobs, we're going to have a massive, massive number of foreclosures. And I'm a landlord. We have properties here in Austin. We are already being told we're not going to get paid this month by multiple tenants. And so you're going to see massive foreclosures and massive evictions. And so here's what the government has done because of those two things during the coronavirus. They put a hold on foreclosures and evictions for 2 weeks. Here's what that means. Now, to the average person who doesn't understand real estate and doesn't understand this situation, they say, great, nobody's going to get foreclosed on in the next 2 weeks. So that if they don't make their payments, they're okay. Nobody's going to get evicted. If they don't pay rent, they're okay. Well, here's the reality is foreclosure proceedings take months. So the people who are being foreclosed on in these 2 months stopped paying their bills a long time ago. That's yesterday's problem that we're solving. Same thing with rents. If you stop paying your rent today, the fastest you can get evicted, I think, is here in Texas. It's about 60 days, maybe 80 days to get somebody evicted. In most jurisdictions, it can take 3 months to 9 months to get somebody evicted. There's some really weird jurisdictions here in the US where it can even take longer than that. So here's what people hear when they hear foreclosure and rent moratoriums is they stop paying their bills. So here's the math we need to do. 10 million people lost their jobs. They're not going to pay their rent. They're not going to pay their mortgages. And now the government is sending out stimulus money that is barely going to cover their bills. And so here's what we need to understand. Number one, this is a massive economic crisis. Number two, we are going to see pain in a number of industries: commercial real estate, residential real estate, automotive, banking, retail, the entire finance sector. We are going to see massive growth in industries as well. Those are going to get crushed. But what is going to grow like crazy? I mean, clearly, teleconferencing, remote working, telemedicine, e-commerce is exploding right now. I have e-commerce clients that are having record weeks because everybody's buying online. There is going to be a massive shift from in-person retail to online retail. We're going to see a massive shift from in-person medicine to online medicine. We're going to see a massive shift from in-person consulting and therapy and service businesses to either online or mobile, where you're going to people's houses. Here's what I want you to know about this crisis. The way that the government has been talking about it, the way the news media has been talking about it, is a short-term, few-week issue. I heard this all the time during the foreclosure crisis, and it frustrated me because that is the worst type of misinformation. Here's what I want every entrepreneur who follows me to know. We are in a decade-long or more issue, effective today. There is no way we're going to fix this with stimulus. There is no way we're going to fix this with another check from the government. This is going to take time. We're going to have to work through first a wave of commercial property that comes onto the market, then a wave of residential property that comes onto the market, then automobile manufacturers are going to have a hard time selling anything new or getting financing for it. We are going to see massive, catastrophic financial distress. And I say this because I want you to know reality. Now, at the same time, everything I just said, massive catastrophic financial distress. There's going to be industries that are reorganized and clearly massively taken apart. The travel industry, the hospitality industry, events industries are all shut down right now. But here's what I want you to know as an entrepreneur. And here's what I truly believe. This is the biggest opportunity we've ever had. Napoleon Hill said, every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater opportunity. And I believe that with all of my heart, because in my life, if there's one thing I've faced, it's adversity. I went through the dot-com crisis, through 9/11, through the stock market crash, through personal crisis. I almost died when I was a kid. I've had tons of stuff go on in my life that tells me that adversity absolutely creates opportunity. And in this case, here's what I want everyone who follows me to know is that this is the biggest opportunity in the history of man, period. Organizations or entire industries will be reshuffled. You know, I told somebody the other day, in a normal market, you can't displace Hilton. You can't displace Marriott. In a market like this, anybody who is the entrenched player can be displaced completely. And if you look at the Great Depression, it's uncanny how many multinational, international corporations were started, billion-dollar companies were started during the Great Depression. So here's what I want everyone to know is if you're an entrepreneur, here's our mission. Here's what we must do. Here's what we have to do right now for the good of humanity is we must rise above the noise, turn off the news, read what you need to, do not watch video. Rise above the noise, identify the opportunities that are out there, grab hold of them, make them happen, get into momentum and take the world with you. Because here's what's happening right now. There's going to be a reorganization, a reshuffling, a complete change in the entire planet. And we need to be there to understand what to do next. And we need to get, we as entrepreneurs will drive this forward like we always have. Because here's what I want us to know about this crisis. There's no way under it, around it, or over it. We must go through it. The faster we go, the faster we decide that is what we're going to do, the faster we will get there. So I want you all to know that entrepreneurs are the most consistent source of positive human evolution, and we always will be. And this is an opportunity not just to grow your business, to make a contribution, to grab market share, to be able to help more people. But this is an opportunity, I truly believe, to advance the evolution of mankind in a massive way. Right now, things are changing. Things that should have happened a long time are now happening. People can work remote. There's not as much travel. There's not as much greenhouse gases going into the environment. There is a massive evolution happening right now. And if you understand the numbers and you keep your wits about you, you will win. I want you to remember, the calmest person in a crisis wins. The person who's the calmest is the one who knows the answers. Join me next week on Thursday for the webinar that we're going to be doing where we share all of this information. And then right now, go to the Billionaire Code group, the Billionaire Code community on Facebook. Join our Facebook group so that you can get updates like this, so that you have a community that will help you through this crisis, and let us support you throughout this because we are going to be doing this for a long time. Go to the Billionaire Code community. I will put a link in the comments. Thanks for being here this morning. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.